The phantom phone calls, Nicole. I've always enjoyed the peace and quiet of my solitary evenings at home. But one fateful night, as I settled into my cozy living room, my tranquil world was shattered by a series of unnerving phone calls that would unlock a mystery I had never imagined. The first call came at precisely 9:13 p.m. The ringing phone pulled me from the pages of my book, and I glanced at the caller ID. It displayed a string of numbers I didn't recognize, just a jumble of digits with no name attached. I hesitated for a moment, but finally decided to answer. "Hello?" I said, my voice cautious. Static crackled on the other end of the line, and my heart began to race. Then, a voice, distorted and cold, spoke.
"You cannot escape your past."
It whispered, each word dripping with ominous intent. A shiver ran down my spine, and I clutched the phone tighter.
"Who is this? What do you want?"
But there was no response, only the sound of heavy breathing. Then, the line went dead. I tried to dismiss it as a prank call, but the unsettling message lingered in the back of my mind. It was as if the caller knew something about me, something that I wanted to keep buried in the past. Over the next few days, the calls continued, always from the same unknown number. Each time, the voice on the other end delivered cryptic warnings and unsettling details from my own history. It was as if they had access to my darkest secrets and reveled in exposing them. One evening, as I answered yet another call, the voice spoke with chilling clarity.
"The secrets you hide will be your undoing."
Panic welled up inside me as I realized the caller was alluding to a past mistake, a mistake I had tried to forget. How could they possibly know? It was a secret that only a select few people knew, and none of them would have any reason to torment me in this way. The ominous predictions made by the caller began to come true. They warned me of an impending accident, and the next day, I narrowly escaped a car crash in a matter of seconds. They foretold a fire in my apartment building, and I was the last tenant to safely evacuate before the flames consumed the structure. My life became a nightmare of constant dread as I waited for the next phone call and the grim prophecy it would bring. But there was no pattern, no way to predict when the caller would strike next. In a desperate attempt to unravel the mystery, I decided to investigate the unknown number. I contacted my phone provider and begged them to trace the source of the calls, but they could find no record of the number in their system. It was as if the calls were originating from a void, an impenetrable black hole. I reached out to the police, providing them with all the details I had, but they were equally baffled. There was no evidence of any wrongdoing, and the calls remained a chilling enigma. As I delved deeper into my own past, searching for any clue that might explain the calls, I uncovered a long-forgotten incident from my youth. It was a mistake I had made, an act that had hurt someone deeply. I had thought it was behind me, buried and forgotten, but the calls had brought it back to haunt me. I knew I had to confront the past, to make amends for what I had done, in the hopes that it would put an end to the torment. It wasn't an easy journey, facing the consequences of my actions and seeking forgiveness, but it was the only way to break the cycle. One evening, as I sat alone in my living room, I received one final call. The voice on the other end was no longer cold and menacing, it was filled with an eerie sadness.
"You faced your past."
It said, the words laden with a strange sense of closure.
"The cycle is broken."
And just like that, the call stopped. The mystery that had haunted me for weeks vanished into the silence, leaving behind a sense of eerie emptiness. I may never know who was behind the phantom phone calls or how they had access to my secrets. but I had learned a valuable lesson about the weight of my own actions and the power of redemption. It was a haunting journey, one that would stay with me forever, a reminder that the past has a way of catching up with us, even when we least expect it. The Distorted Reflections, Natalie. I've always cherished my solitude, the comforting embrace of an empty house during those quiet evenings. But as the days grew shorter and darkness crept in, an unsettling occurrence invaded my sanctuary, turning my peaceful haven into a realm of torment. It all began one evening as I prepared dinner in the cozy kitchen of my suburban home. The late afternoon sun cast a warm, golden glow through the window, painting the room in a soft, inviting light. But as I glanced at my own reflection in the glass, I noticed something strange, a faint distortion that rippled across my reflection, like a pebble disturbing the surface of a pond. I blinked, convinced it was a trick of the light, but the distortion remained. It was as if my reflection was trying to escape from its mirrored prison, pushing against the boundaries of our world. My heart quickened with unease, and I turned away, trying to shake off the eerie sensation. Over the next few days, the strange reflections continued to haunt me. They appeared in every reflective surface, the bathroom mirror, the microwave door, even the surface of my smartphone. Each time, the distortions grew more pronounced, revealing disturbing scenes from an alternate reality. In the bathroom mirror, I saw a city consumed by flames, skyscrapers crumbling to the ground as panicked crowds fled in terror. In the microwave door, I witnessed a desolate wasteland, littered with the remnants of a world that had succumbed to ruin. And in the surface of my smartphone, I glimpsed a horrifying carnival where grotesque creatures danced to a discordant melody. I couldn't escape the feeling that these reflections were trying to communicate with me, to warn me of some impending catastrophe. But the messages were cryptic, the scenes fragmented and disjointed. One evening, as I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, I saw a reflection that filled me with dread. It was an image of myself, but it was not me. The reflection wore a look of terror, its eyes wide with fear, as if it had just witnessed something unimaginably horrifying. I stumbled back, my heart pounding, and the reflection returned to normal. But the sensation of being watched, of being entangled with this alternate reality, only grew stronger. I began to lose sleep, tormented by the reflections that invaded my every waking moment. I felt as if I were teetering on the edge of madness, my world unraveling before my eyes. Desperation drove me to seek answers. I scoured the internet for any mention of similar experiences, but found nothing. I even consulted with experts in psychology, hoping for an explanation rooted in science, but they could offer no solace. As the distortions in the reflections intensified, so did the foreboding sense that something catastrophic was on the horizon. I became obsessed with deciphering the cryptic messages, spending hours staring into mirrors and windows, trying to make sense of the fragmented scenes. One evening, as I gazed into the living room window, I saw a reflection that chilled me to the bone. It was a vision of my own house, but it was crumbling and decaying, as if time itself had unraveled its very foundations. I rushed to the window, looking out at the peaceful suburban street bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. But the reflection in the glass refused to align with reality. It was a world consumed by chaos and decay, a world that bore a horrifying resemblance to the visions I had seen. I knew I had to act, to find a way to break free from this nightmarish entanglement with the alternate reality. But as I searched for answers, I couldn't help but wonder, was the alternate reality a warning, a glimpse into a future that I had the power to change? Or was it a grim prophecy, a reflection of the world's inexorable descent into chaos? As the distortions in the reflections continued to intensify, I found myself standing at the precipice of a harrowing choice. The visions had become inescapable, the boundaries between my world and the alternate reality crumbling before my eyes. The mirror in my bedroom became a portal, a gateway to a distorted world where time had no meaning and reality had lost all sense of order. I knew that I had to face whatever lay on the other side, to confront the source of the reflections and put an end to the torment that had consumed my life. With trembling hands, I reached out and touched the surface of the mirror, and as I stepped through, I knew that I was entering a realm of unspeakable horrors, a world where the line between reality and nightmare had blurred beyond recognition. But I had to know the truth, to understand the mystery that had brought me to this terrifying crossroads. As I ventured further into the alternate reality, I could only hope that I would find the answers I sought and that I could bring an end to the distorted reflections that had haunted my every waking moment. The creepy doll. Back in the day when I was just a little kid, I got a doll for my birthday. I don't remember who it was from, but it wasn't just any doll, though. It was this creepy-looking thing with button eyes that seemed to follow you around the room. I named it Lily, thinking it would be my new best friend. At first, everything was cool. I'd play tea parties with Lily, pretending to pour invisible tea into her tiny cup. But as the days went by, things started getting weird. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, and Lily would be sitting at the edge of my bed, staring at me with those soulless eyes. Freaky, right? I thought maybe I was just imagining things, so I asked my parents if they noticed anything strange about Lily. They just laughed it off, saying I had an overactive imagination. But I knew something was up. One night, after another creepy staring session with Lily, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed the doll and chucked it out of my room, thinking that would be the end of it. I felt relieved, thinking I'd finally gotten rid of the weird vibes. The next morning, though, I found Lily sitting on my dresser, as if nothing had happened. I freaked out and ran to my parents, telling them about the doll's supernatural ability. They exchanged puzzled glances, but weren't too concerned. Days passed, and the cycle continued. Every time I threw Lily out, it would come back the next day. I was convinced the doll had it out for me. I even tried locking it in a box and hiding it in the closet, but Lily always found her way back into my room, which creeped the heck out of me. One night, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I dragged Lily out to the backyard myself and tossed her into the trash bin. I watched as the garbage truck took her away, hoping that was the end of all of this. The next morning, I went downstairs for breakfast, expecting a Lily-free day. But when I walked into the kitchen, there she was, sitting at the table, staring at me with those unnerving button eyes. I couldn't believe it. My heart pounded as I grabbed the doll and showed my parents. This time, they looked worried. My dad suggested maybe it was a prank, and my mom thought it might be a neighbor messing with me. But deep down, I knew it wasn't a joke. Lily was determined to stick around, no matter what. I swear sometimes I could see her expression. I could see her angry. Desperate, I begged my parents to get rid of the doll for good. They hesitated, but seeing the fear in my eyes, they finally agreed. That evening, we drove to a remote area, far from her house, and my parents tossed Lily into a pit they dug in the ground. We covered it with dirt and said a little goodbye ceremony, hoping that would be the end of it. But as we drove back home, an eerie silence filled the car. I couldn't shake the feeling that Lily wasn't done with us. My mom turned on the radio, but we didn't get any radio signals. I couldn't believe my eyes. The next day, I woke up to find Lily sitting on my bed, dirt stains on her dress as if she had clawed her way out of the grave. I immediately panicked, and I screamed for my parents. They rushed into my room, their eyes were wide with disbelief. That was the breaking point. My parents were scared, and I was terrified. We couldn't escape the clutches of this possessed doll. My parents decided to take extreme measures. In the dead of night, we gathered in the backyard. My dad held a canister of gasoline, and my mom clutched a box of matches. We looked at Lily, who seemed to mock us with her lifeless gaze. But I could see her expression. I could feel her emotions. I felt angry. I felt her anger. The decision was made. My parents burned the doll, hoping it would finally put an end to the nightmare. As the flames engulfed Lily, we felt a dark energy lingering in the air, and I felt rage. The crackling of the fire echoed through the silent night. We watched as the doll, now reduced to ashes, crumbled away, hoping that it would finally put an end to the nightmare. Days turned into weeks, and the memory of Lily haunted us. But life took a more sinister turn when my mom, who had been overjoyed about her pregnancy, began experiencing strange and ominous things. Late at night, we kept hearing faint whispers echoing through the hallways. Day by day, we felt the air was becoming heavy with an unnatural presence. We didn't feel safe at home or anywhere else. My mom's once glowing complexion turned pale, and her joyous anticipation for my new brother transformed into a constant state of fear. One stormy night, my mom was jolted awake by a terrifying vision of her lovingly holding a baby, but it was limp and lifeless. Lily's evil laughter echoed in her ears, and a strange figure resembling the doll hovered at the foot of her bed. Terrified, my mom woke my dad, recounting the haunting encounter. They rushed to the hospital, fearing for both the unborn child and my mom's safety. The doctor's face turned grim as they examined her. The once healthy pregnancy had strangely taken a dark turn. Unexplainable complications arose, and the doctor struggled to understand the problems of the sudden complication. We were devastated as the once promising life inside my mom's womb now fighting to live. As the days passed, my mom's health deteriorated alongside the unborn child. The atmosphere at home became tense. It was only filled with terror and devastation. Not long after that, one night, as the storm raged outside, there was a sound of someone ringing the doorbell. She went to take a look, but slipped and fell down from the stairs and was rushed to the emergency room. The air was thick with silence as my dad and I waited anxiously for news. I have never seen my dad so worried. And it was the most heartbreaking news I heard. My mom had suffered a miscarriage. The unborn child, the innocent child, a victim of the sinister events, was gone forever. I will never get to see him ever. The aftermath was a blur of grief and sorrow. My mom went mad. She told everyone that she felt someone deliberately pushed her down. She wailed and screamed in agony for weeks. She had to go to therapy sessions. A couple of years later, my parents tried to conceive again, but the same cycle repeated. This time it just got worse than before. My parents were so devastated, and they were never the same again. The Diary in the Attic, Emma. It's been just a few days since I had just moved into an old, creaky house on the outskirts of town. It was a rainy, gloomy evening when I decided to explore the attic. The attic door was covered in dust and cobwebs. It was hard to open, but I managed to do it. Inside, it was dark, and there were lots of boxes. I climbed the narrow stairs carefully. The air in the attic felt heavy with secrets. It was fascinating as I was excited to find out any interesting treasure. I started rummaging through the boxes, finding old clothes, broken toys, and dusty photo albums. But one box stood out. I pulled it out from the pile and gently removed a red cloth that covered it. Inside, there was an old book with a strange symbol on it. The symbol looked like it was moving, and it gave me a cold feeling. Maybe I was just tired from all the moving in. The book itself was ancient, with yellow pages and faded ink. It was a diary, and I could make out only a few words on the first page, whispers from the past. Now, this is a treasure. I wonder what's inside. Excited, I started reading. I also wonder how old is this diary, probably more than a century old. As I read it, I found that the diary belonged to a woman named Amelia who lived here a long time ago. She wrote about dreadful and weird things that had plagued her family. Somehow the more I read, the more disturbing her stories got, but I kept reading. Amelia wrote of whispers that echoed through the house at night, voices that seemed to come from the walls themselves. She talked about moving shadows and a constant feeling of being watched. Her family had consulted priests, mediums, and even scholars, but no one could explain the haunting phenomena that tormented them. Damn, that's creepy. Amelia's diary told about spooky whispers in the house at night, like voices in the walls. She mentioned shadows moving around and feeling watched all the time. Her family asked priests, mediums, and smart people for help, but nobody could explain the scary stuff that tormented them. Man, that's really creepy. The diary hinted at rituals performed in the attic, desperate attempts to banish the malevolent forces that had taken residence in the house. Unfortunately for them, the rituals had only made things worse. They seemed to unleash some sort of darkness that haunted every corner of their lives. That was a crazy story. It was so interesting I couldn't stop reading. I felt like I somehow knew Amelia and her scary situation. I felt an inexplicable connection to Amelia and her plight, as if her fear had transcended time and reached out to me. It was then that I heard it, a faint whisper, like a soft breath against my ear. I froze, my heart stared pounding in my chest. The attic was silent, save for the sound of my own breathing. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination, a result of the eerie atmosphere of the attic. But then, the whisper came again, more pronounced this time. "Help us," it whispered, like many ghostly voices together, which was terrifying. I couldn't see anyone, but then something was there, and it felt like it was coming from the diary itself. Panic gripped me as I couldn't understand what was happening. I slammed the book shut, my hands trembling, and backed away from it. The attic suddenly felt suffocating, the air thick with something evil and cursed. I locked the attic and I hurried down the stairs, and the whispers got quieter as I went down. That was creepy. I went to sleep that night hoping it would all just go away. That night, I woke up shivering from the nightmare of Amelia. I sat up in exhaustion. And then I turned and saw the diary that I had locked up in the attic is now sitting on my bedstand with the page that I left off. I screamed in horror and I tried to lock it up in the attic again. Every night since then, an eerie dread gripped me, squeezing like a vice on my soul. I couldn't escape the gnawing sensation that unseen eyes watched my every move. The book appeared every night in my bedroom with the pages open, forcing me to read them. The whispers continued, growing louder and more insistent, as if Amelia and her family were reaching out from beyond the grave, begging to be free from their agonizing plight. I was haunted by terrible nightmares, visions of shadowy figures lurking in the corners of my room. And how I wished I'd never found that wretched diary. Now I know why I got this house for a bargain. Desperation drove me to seek help. I sought out a local historian, a keeper of the town's dark secrets. He revealed the house's ominous history, a tale of rituals gone horribly wrong and a curse that had plagued generation after generation. The historian's voice quivered as he spoke of the diary's importance, a potential key to breaking the curse. But it came with a chilling condition. The spirits that had taken up residence in the house, he warned, would not release their grip without a sacrifice. With desperation, I tried selling the house for months, but no buyer wanted it. It was as if I was forced to be trapped in this house. I fell into a trap of dread and fear. I decided to try to break the curse instead. With all the courage I had, I returned to the attic, clutching the accursed diary tightly. The air grew thick with tension as I lit candles and incense, following the cryptic instructions from the pages. The whispers got louder, like a chorus of despair surrounding me. My heart pounded with fear and desperation to live as chanted the strange instructions. As I completed the ritual, the attic was starting to be filled in a blinding light, and I felt a powerful surge of energy. The voices cried out in agony and then fell silent. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and relief and tears flooded through me as I realized that I had succeeded in breaking the curse. The house felt different afterward, lighter and more welcoming. The nightmares ceased, and the whispers were replaced with a sense of peace. I had finally laid Amelia and her family to rest, freeing them from the torment that had plagued them for so long. But as I closed the diary for the last time and returned it to its box, I couldn't help but wonder if their whispers would ever truly fade, or if they would linger in the attic, waiting for the next curious soul to stumble upon their tale of horror and redemption. What I'm about to tell you is straight out of a nightmare. It all began like any other day in my regular life. But little did I know, someone was keeping an eye on everything I did. Weird things started happening, things I thought were just random. Every day, on my way to work, I'd spot the same guy at the bus stop. He stood there like a statue, really tall, with a hat pulled so low over his eyes that I couldn't see his face. At first, I figured he just had the same routine as me. But then, he started showing up in places I never expected: the grocery store, the park where I jog, even outside where I work. Naturally, I got a bit spooked. I mean, who wouldn't? I tried convincing myself it was all in my head, that I was being paranoid. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Things took a dark turn when I started receiving anonymous messages on my phone. Weird texts that hinted at things only I knew. Details about my daily routine, the color of my bedroom walls, even the pizza toppings I liked. It was like the stalker had a backstage pass to my life. I became really scared. To protect myself, I changed the locks on my doors, checked my windows 3 times, and started going home in different ways. But no matter what I did, it seemed like this person who was bothering me was always one step ahead. The messages they sent got even scarier, from just creepy observations to direct threats. It felt like I was the prey, and no matter where I went or what I tried, the stalker was always there, hiding in the shadows, like a constant, creepy presence. It happened one scary night. I was sitting there, watching TV, when suddenly, all the lights went out. It got really, really dark, and this creepy feeling crawled up my back. And then, out of nowhere, I heard it, a whisper, so quiet but definitely there. It was the stalker's voice, right outside my window, saying really unsettling things. I couldn't move, fear had me stuck in place. That's when it hit me, this wasn't just some random person, it was a predator who had invaded my life, and I was trapped in the darkness with them. Terrified, I called the police. They searched the area, but the stalker was like a phantom, leaving no trace behind. I couldn't sleep that night, haunted by the whispers. I knew I had to be vigilant, but I was going insane. Day by day, the stalker's tactics became more invasive. They started sending letters, handwritten, no return address. The words on the pages were a twisted mix of obsession and hatred. They knew about my childhood, my friends, even my deepest fears. It was as if this person had dug into the very core of my being. I set up cameras around my house, trying to see who the stalker was. But every time I checked the recordings, there was nothing, just quiet streets and empty nights. I felt really hopeless, like the stalker knew how to stay hidden, playing a twisted game of cat and mouse with me. They were always one step ahead, and it made the situation even scarier. Things got really bad. The stalker took it to a whole new level. They started wrecking my stuff. One day, I found my car scratched with creepy messages, and another day, my front door was covered in weird, disturbing symbols. It was like I couldn't escape. My own life felt like a prison. I couldn't relax. I always had to watch my back, waiting for the next scary thing the stalker would do. The police were sympathetic, but their hands were tied. Without concrete evidence, there was little they could do. I was devastated. My life was a wreck. I became a detective in my own nightmare, trying to piece together the puzzle of my stalker's identity. My friends urged me to move, change my name, start fresh, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the stalker would follow me, no matter where I went. One day, as I was scrolling through my social media, I noticed a new friend request, a profile with no photos, no mutual friends, just a blank slate. I knew who it was. Against my better judgment, I accepted, hoping to get a glimpse of the person who had turned my life upside down. The stalker wasted no time. Messages flooded my inbox, each one more sinister and disturbing than the last. They described my every move, my thoughts, my nightmares. It was like the stalker had become a puppet master, pulling the strings of my life with a sadistic pleasure. I deleted my social media, changed my number, and went off the grid. But the messages kept coming, finding new ways to pierce through my walls of isolation. It felt like the stalker was a shadow, always there, lurking just out of sight. I was really desperate by now. I decided to get a private investigator, someone who could figure out who was tormenting me. But the stalker was like a ghost. The investigator couldn't find any clues, no digital hints, nothing to follow. It felt like the stalker was this invisible presence, haunting me from the shadows, making the whole situation even scarier than ever. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I sent the stalker an email, pouring out all my fear, anger, and confusion, begging them to tell me why they were tormenting me. I was shocked when they actually responded. But what they said was twisted and disturbing, like a sick confession that made everything even scarier. The stalker said they used to be in my class back in high school, but honestly, I barely remembered them. It turned out they held a serious grudge, like this twisted obsession that grew over the years. The stuff they told me was like they rewrote our shared history in their messed up head, making everything seem creepy and distorted. It shocked me and made me really disgusted. I took the evidence to the police, and they finally had a lead. After what felt like an eternity, they finally caught the stalker. But the nightmare didn't stop there. The court hearings were really traumatizing. The stalker kept staring at me with eyes full of hate and satisfaction. Every moment in that courtroom felt uncomfortable and painful, like the nightmare was still going on. In the end, the judge issued a restraining order, but by then, the fear had already settled in. It was too late. I wasn't the same person anymore. I felt broken. Even though the stalker was behind bars, I couldn't get rid of the feeling that their presence was still hanging over me. It took years of countless therapy sessions, countless sleepless nights, and a constant battle with paranoia to start feeling kind of normal again. The fear just wouldn't let go, ever. This whole thing started innocently enough. We hired a part-time maid, Miss Arpa, to help around the house. She was this sweet Asian lady, always smiling, with a touch of mysterious charm. The first few weeks were smooth. Miss Arpa was great at her job, cleaning, cooking, the whole deal. But as time passed, I noticed she started acting a bit off. There was this intensity in her eyes, like she had some secret agenda. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but it made me uneasy. As the days passed, strange things started happening. We began to notice subtle changes in our behavior. It was as if Miss Harpa's every word had a strange power over us. We found ourselves doing things we wouldn't normally do, blindly following her instructions without question. One day, my family and I decided to install CCTV cameras around the house, thinking it would be a good security measure. Little did I know, those cameras would unveil a secret that would turn our lives upside down. Late one night, we sat down to review the footage. Everything seemed normal until we stumbled upon Miss Harpa in the kitchen. Instead of cleaning or cooking, she was brewing some concoction. What we saw was out of this world. We saw her inserting a live scorpion, some powder. If we weren't mistaken, it appeared to be strands of hairs and nails. Disgusted and horrified, we continued watching. To our horror, we saw her slipping that potion into our food and drinks. It was like something out of a horror movie. My mind raced with questions. What was she doing, and why was she feeding us this disgusting brew? Where did she even get the live scorpions from? The tension in the room was palpable as we watched the footage. Shock and disbelief spread across our faces as we witnessed Miss Harpa's disturbing actions. We couldn't comprehend the gravity of the situation. The very person we welcomed into our home was using some sort of dark magic to manipulate us. We decided we needed to confront Miss Harpa and put an end to her sinister games. As we confronted her, her eyes darkened with an eerie intensity. She admitted to practicing black magic, claiming it was the only way to make us obedient. We couldn't comprehend the insane situation that we were in. We asked Miss Harpa to leave our lives forever. She left without a word, disappearing into the shadows from which she had emerged. Horror in my own house, Jasmine. Back when I was just a 10-year-old kid, my parents had to dash out for a bit, leaving me and my sibling home alone. That's when Mrs. Lopez, our seemingly sweet neighbor, stepped in to watch over us. Everything kicked off like any regular day, sandwiches, cartoons, the whole deal. But then, out of the blue, Mrs. Lopez morphs from the friendly lady who bakes cookies into this wide-eyed, crazy monster version of herself. It's like a scene from a movie where you're laughing one moment, and the next, the atmosphere shifts, and you're left wondering what dark turn the plot is about to take. The kind that makes your heart race and your mind scream danger. The air changes, and you can feel the tension rising as Mrs. Lopez's eyes tell a story of their own, a story you didn't sign up for. And then, she takes out a cold metal glint in her hand, a gun. Yeah, a real, actual gun. Talk about a plot twist that turns your world upside down. Our cozy living room becomes a horror set, and Mrs. Lopez, she's the wicked director of this messed up play. She points the gun at us and declares,
"Game time, kiddos!"
But this wasn't any game, it was a nightmare we couldn't wake up from. Our own home turned into a haunted maze, and we're the ones being chased. Every wrong move, every pause, it's met with that gun making its presence known. We're talking about a horror movie unfolding right in front of our eyes. Not long after, Mrs. Lopez decided to take her villain game to a whole new level. traumatizing things that went way beyond what any kid should ever have to endure. In one messed up scenario, she had us reenact scenes from horror movies. You know, the ones where characters are pushed to their limits, facing their worst fears. It's like she wanted to see how far she could push us, like some sadistic director of our own personal horror show. Then there were these mind games. She'd force us to say and do things that messed with our heads, things that made us question reality. It was like being trapped in a nightmare where the rules of the real world didn't apply anymore. I remember feeling this overwhelming sense of powerlessness. She had this sick satisfaction in making us squirm, and the fear in those moments was paralyzing. We were just kids, for crying out loud, but to her, it was all just a sick game. She just laughed and laughed. I can still remember her evil, sadistic laugh. And then, let me tell you about the physical stuff. It takes the horror to a whole new level. Mrs. Lopez, she wasn't messing around. That gun? She used it to keep us in check, like some twisted form of control. The constant threat of that cold metal hanging over us turned every moment into a nerve-wracking ticking time bomb. Imagine being scared out of your wits, not just by the gun, but by the twisted things she made us do. It messes with your head and your body in ways that go beyond fear. It's like being trapped in a nightmare you can't wake up from. The physical torment became a sick part of this messed up game, pushing us to the edge of what we could endure. She would pour hot wax on us and smile with satisfaction as we begged her to stop. She played this sick game of punishment and physically tormented us with pain. I wish I could wipe those memories clean, but they often appear in my nightmares, reminding me of things we had to go through. That day wasn't just about surviving a crazy neighbor with a gun. It was about enduring a psychological and physical horror show that left us with wounds that ran deep. Living through it was like being stuck in a nightmare that no kid should ever have to face. Mrs. Lopez took the innocence we had and crushed it under the weight of her own messed up reality. It's the kind of thing that makes you question everything you thought you knew about trust and safety. As the hours dragged on, it felt like we were stuck in a never-ending horror movie marathon. Pain, fear, and Mrs. Lopez, she became the unhinged villain of our story. How does someone you trust become this monster right before your eyes? It's a question that lingers, haunting you long after the nightmare is over. Then, a miracle. A noise outside distracts Mrs. Lopez for a moment. Maybe a neighbor returning home. It was our chance to escape, and we took it. We sprinted out of there like our lives depended on it, because, well, they kinda did. We didn't stop running until we found a neighbor to help us. Breathless, hurt, and traumatized, we spill the whole insane story. Cops get involved, and it turns out, Mrs. Lopez dealing with some serious mental issues that everyone missed. After that day, our lives were flipped upside down. Mrs. Lopez gets the help she needs, and my family? We decide to pack our bags and leave that once normal neighborhood, now stained with the memory of that messed up day. Years pass, but you can't shake off something like that. It's a reminder that monsters sometimes wear the friendliest faces until they unleash their darkness. The Antique Watch, Amanda. So, this stormy day kicked off just like any other, the usual grind of work and responsibilities. Little did I know that a seemingly tiny find would turn my world upside down in the worst way possible. It all started when I got this itch to snoop around the attic of my new Victorian pad. The attic had this vibe, like it was hiding some secrets just waiting to spill. Dusty old boxes and relics from who knows when gave the place that whole forgotten history vibe. But something about it was just so creepy. I was poking around, and my fingers stumbled upon this cold metal trunk tucked away in a corner. I couldn't resist, so I pulled it out and used a hammer to crack it open. Man, it was a treasure trove: old letters tied up with ribbons, vintage pictures, diaries, newspaper clippings, and random knickknacks. At the bottom of the pile was this fancy little box, all silver and decked out with cool engravings. Popped it open, and there it was, a vintage pocket watch chillin' in a bed of faded velvet. This watch had that antique charm, you know? Brass casing, giving off that timeless vibe. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Engraved on the back of the watch were the initials EW, a real head-scratcher. The hands of the watch were ticking away, barely audible, like they were whispering secrets from way back when. Caught up in the craftsmanship, I thought, why not wind it up and see if this bad boy still ticks? And I wind up the watch, and bam! It comes to life, ticking away in the attic like it's got its own eerie rhythm. I can't believe it was still working. It's like time itself was napping in that watch, waiting for someone to hit the snooze button. Little did I know, winding up that antique thing was like opening a door to some seriously creepy dimension. As the watch keeps ticking, this weird chill settles in, you know? Shadows start dancing around, and there's this soft whisper echoing through the place. It's like this whisper is carrying the weight of a bunch of untold stories, a spooky melody from way back when that's got this otherworldly vibe. The vibe were just off. That rainy night, I lied in bed, feeling like I'm being watched. The antique watch is just chilling on my bedside table, ticking away like it's got a backstage pass to the silence of the night. I try to brush it off, thinking it's just my imagination playing tricks because of that strange old thing I found. Days roll by, but that watch is sticking around like a clingy friend. Its ticking becomes the soundtrack to my life, a constant reminder of the mystery it brought into my world. And here's where it gets weirder. Stuff starts happening, like things going missing and these strange shadows popping up in my peripheral vision. When I turn around, nothing at all. Weeks rolled on, and the whispers in the attic got much louder. I have been trying to ignore it, but I'm catching faint voices, kind of blurry but with this ghostly urgency. The antique watch is like a hotline to these whispers, like it's holding hands with a realm that's way beyond what us living folks can grab onto. So, one evening, I'm just staring at the watch, wondering how to stop this mess, and out of the blue, the hands start doing the backward tango, totally messing with the rules of time. The room gets colder, and bam! A ghostly figure appears right in front of me. It's this woman in an old-school gown, her eyes like deep black holes staring straight into my soul. She starts talking in this hushed tone, spilling a tale that goes way back, betrayal, tragedy, the whole deal. Turns out, the initials on the watch are hers, Elizabeth Williams, lost to the sands of time. She got a raw deal, backstabbed and all, and her spirit got tied up with this antique timepiece. I actually feel really bad for her despite the torments. Now, Elizabeth's drama unfolds through the attic whispers, and suddenly, I'm in the middle of her spooky story. The watch becomes like this connection between her messed up soul and my everyday life, blending the past and present. My life all got messed up. I don't know how I managed to end up here. Haunted by this ghostly vision, I go all detective, digging into historical records to uncover the real deal behind Elizabeth Williams. The archives spilled the beans on a classic Victorian-era love and deceit story. Elizabeth was engaged to some rich man, but her heart belonged to a broke artist. Secret love affair, accusations, and boom, she meets an early end. The artist, drowning in guilt and sorrow, makes the pocket watch as a love token, unknowingly trapping Elizabeth's spirit in the thing. That's a lot of drama to digest. As I uncover these secrets, the paranormal activities in my house got worse. Objects are moving by themselves, and the attic whispers turn into straight-up cries of despair. And then it hits me, the only way to free Elizabeth's spirit is to dive deep into the past and settle the score on all the messed up stuff that tied her to that antique watch. Elizabeth's ghostly appearances have become a regular thing. I see her almost every day and her eyes are so sad, so tragic, begging for some kind of release. I'm carrying the weight of her pain, this heavy burden that's not just bound by time but goes beyond it. So, in my quest for answers, I stumble upon this old letter tucked away in the attic trunk. It's like a total confession from the rich guy who was into Elizabeth. He spills his guts, saying how sorry he is for all the drama that went down. Turns out, he was the puppet master behind exposing Elizabeth's affair and messing up her reputation. All because of some jealousy and a crazy need for approval from society. With this juicy info in hand, I confront the descendants of the folks who messed with Elizabeth's life. The living now have to deal with the sins of their ancestors, and it's like the past is doing this crazy echo thing through time. The revelations kick off a paranormal tornado that rattles the very bones of my house. As the supernatural storm hits its peak, I'm standing there in the attic, gripping the watch like it's the Holy Grail. The ticking goes into overdrive, and the whispers turn into straight-up cries of agony. Suddenly, boom! Elizabeth's ghostly self appears, rocking a mix of sadness and gratitude in her eyes. With a heavy heart, I pull out this ritual I cobbled together from old texts and ghost stories. I plan to cut the ties between Elizabeth's spirit and the watch, giving her the peace she's been denied for centuries. I'm chanting away in the attic, and the watch starts glowing like a mini sun. The whole ghostly tornado hits its peak, the air's buzzing with energy, and time itself seems to stop. It's like I've become this channel for all the supernatural vibes converging right there. The ritual actually works. Elizabeth's spirit, free from the watch's grip, just floats away like a gentle breeze. The attic goes dead silent, all the paranormal craziness stops, and the heaviness in the air disappears. The watch, now just a regular old timepiece, is in my hands. Standing there, I can't shake this feeling that I'm now the keeper of this ancient tale, a story that breaks the time rules and finds its closure in this wild blend of the living and the dead. A costly mistake, anonymous. My nightmare started when I stumbled into the world of the dark web. Now, I'm not some tech whiz or a thrill seeker, but late one night, fueled by boredom and a touch of curiosity, I decided to just dive into the forbidden corners of the internet. I'd heard stories about the dark web, whispers of it being a digital underworld where the real shady stuff happens. So, armed with my laptop and a hefty dose of caution, I downloaded Tor browser and started digging. After a bunch of cryptic forums and sketchy links, I found myself on a site called The Red Door. No flashy graphics, just a plain red door icon on a black background. The threads were a mix of creepy and downright disturbing. People discussing illegal trades, hacking tips, drugs, and other absolutely disturbing things you wouldn't believe exist. It was like stumbling into a cyberpunk nightmare. And then, I saw a thread that stood out, the Room of Faces. The description claimed it was a live stream where people could anonymously share their darkest secrets. Now, I'm no saint, but the idea of strangers pouring out their souls on a hidden camera intrigued me. I clicked on it, half expecting some twisted reality show. The stream opened to a dimly lit room with a single chair in the center. It looked like an interrogation room from a crime drama. The chat box was buzzing with usernames like Shadowwalker and Whispering Ghost. A bit cliché, but hey, it added to the atmosphere. A masked figure entered the room, their face hidden by a sinister-looking mask. They gestured to the chair, and moments later, someone in a hoodie took a seat. The masked figure spoke in a distorted voice, asking the person to confess their darkest secret. As the hoodie wearer spilled their guts, confessing to things that would make your grandma faint, the chat box exploded with comments. Some cheered on the confessor, while others typed cryptic messages about paying the price for their sins. I thought it was all just a show, some sick form of online entertainment. But then, things took a bizarre turn. The masked figure started revealing details about the confessor's life that no one on the internet should know. Names, addresses, family secrets. It was like they had a window into this person's soul. That's insane. The confessor freaked out, understandably, and abruptly left the room. The chat box went wild, demanding more confessions. I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was witnessing something beyond a mere internet stunt. Against my better judgment, I decided to try it myself. I didn't know what I was thinking. I mean, one can get curious, right? I typed a fake confession, something harmless to test the waters. To my horror, the masked figure acknowledged it and started spouting details about my life, my real name, my address, even my favorite childhood pet's name. I panicked and shut down the stream. That's when it hit me, this wasn't some elaborate show. The Room of Faces had something darker at play, something that could pry into your life with an unsettling accuracy. Days passed, and the whole experience haunted me. I couldn't shake off the feeling that my digital footprint was being watched. Every creak in the house, every shadow in the corner of my eye, felt like a reminder that the Room of Faces was still lurking in the virtual shadows. One evening, as I was browsing the regular web, I received an anonymous email. No subject, just a link. Against my gut feeling, I clicked it. The link led me to a live stream, and my blood ran cold. It was the Room of Faces, and this time, the masked figure was addressing me directly. They knew everything, my deepest fears, my regrets, the time I cheated on a math test in 5th grade. It was like my life had been laid bare for the world to see. The masked figure gave me an ultimatum: confess a real, gut-wrenching secret, or face the consequences of having my life exposed. Panic set in, and I racked my brain for something worthy of confessing. But the more I thought, the more I realized that the Room of Faces had become a twisted puppet master, pulling the strings of my sanity. I refused to play their sick game. I shut down the stream, disconnected from the internet, and even contemplated tossing my laptop into the nearest dumpster. But the Room of Faces wasn't done with me. Late at night, I started receiving bizarre messages on my phone. Anonymous texts that hinted at things only I knew. Photos of me taken through my webcam when I thought it was off. It was like the Room of Faces had invaded my life, transcending the digital realm. Fear became my constant companion. I couldn't escape the feeling that I was being watched, even in the privacy of my own home. Shadows in the dark took on sinister shapes, and every unexpected noise sent my heart racing. Desperate, I sought the help of a cybersecurity expert. They traced the Room of Faces back to a network of servers hidden in the depths of the dark web. The expert warned me that these were not your average hackers, they were a collective of cyber stalkers with a twisted sense of power. Together, we devised a plan to cut off the Room of Faces from my life. It involved changing all my passwords, wiping my digital footprint as much as possible, and going off the grid for a while. It was like trying to escape a relentless ghost haunting every corner of my existence. As I implemented the plan, the Room of Faces fought back. They sent me threatening emails, detailing events from my childhood that I'd long forgotten. It was like they had a file on every aspect of my life, waiting to unleash it in the most unsettling way possible. But slowly, as I distanced myself from the digital world, the grip of the room of faces weakened. The messages became less frequent, the shadows less menacing. It was as if they couldn't reach me beyond the confines of the internet. Months passed, and the room of faces faded into a distant nightmare. I learned to live with a heightened sense of caution, always looking over my shoulder, both in the physical and virtual realms. The experience changed me. I became a digital recluse, avoiding the dark web like the plague. The room of faces had taught me that some doors should remain firmly closed, no matter how tempting the secrets behind them might be. So, here's a word of advice: be wary of the digital shadows, for once you step into the realm of the dark web, you might find yourself entangled in a web of horrors that no amount of digital savvy can escape. If you found any enjoyment in the video, I implore you to click that like button and subscribe if you dare.